domain. And having said this, we believe that given the volume of content available in this draft NCF, it is only fair that we would have spread this conversation in 5 subsequent discussions, right? So today's discussion is all about the first part of the, I would say, 5-part within the draft NCF. I'm obviously sure that we don't have to delve into what NCF is all about. So we will straight dive into hearing from our expert into their perspective as to how they see this particular document which has come up. Also for everybody's benefit, I would like to make a quick mention that this is open for each and every one of you giving your views. So I think there's an email ID which during the conversation or at the end of the conversation we will share with you, and we can actually, which is the Government of India's ID, you can share your feedback through that particular ID if you deem fit. Okay, so just for the quick one more sort of a moment, which is, I think I see Bhavani ji now. Fabulous. Good. So now good to have you, Bhavani ji, and let's kickstart this, right? I have made you the co-host, so that means you can any point in time mute or unmute yourself. Okay. Welcoming my first guest, Mrs. Amrita Burman. Again, needs no introduction, Deputy Director at the Sunbeam Group of Institution. Usually I fall back to any such conversation to her because I feel that I would not have to really ask or request her any further in terms of what we want to do with her, right? Which is that she will be starting this conversation. So as I go to my next speakers, I will then quickly introduce them to you. Mrs. Burman, over to you. We can start with a broad view and then we can go to the specifics. Over to you.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Gaurav. Thank you so much, IPN. And more power to you, Gaurav. I think you've been doing an excellent job. I thought that I'd put on records one very important thing about IPN is I've been associated with you for so many years. And I think the best part about this platform is it's open to all. It's not the elite. And we always discuss this. And I think that's important because the kind of places we all come from, that's where education is needed. And I'm so happy that you're doing it. So also good evening to my co-panelists. So let's talk about the NCF SE. And thanks for informing us. Even the quizzer in you quizzed me, but I really didn't know. We just had some conversation this afternoon only on other NCFs, but I'm glad you spoke about the number. I think ever since the NEP has been out in 2020, we've had umpteen discussions on NEP. There's so much of clarity on that. And then, of course, came the NCF FS or the ECC, which you just mentioned, which was the first part. And I think that was, personally, it was something that I really loved because we have been talking about it, that FS side, the ECC side had been completely neglected. And I thought that's a beautiful, beautiful document. And I was busy reading, finished, of course, with that, and started reading Nipun, because if you want to do real good work in the ECCE side, you have to read Nipun along with it, because, you know, the competencies, etc., are very well laid out in Nipun. Barely just managed to finish Nipun and came NCF SE 600 pages. Why I'm saying this is that I must confess that I haven't read all the 600 odd pages. And so I was happy when you said it's part A. I've read more than part A, of course, but I think I will keep my conversation to some part beyond, you know, it's about 400 pages that I've kind of read. I haven't read all. Having said that, I think it's, again, the NCF SE, the draft, is a very, very clear document. It's a very clear document. It speaks about a lot of things, which is very important for teachers to know. And in fact, it starts, the introduction to the NCF SE says that teacher is at the heart of the practice of education. And this NCF SE is meant for the teacher. So the perspective of the teacher is the most important. And therefore, I think it's absolutely imperative for all of us to read these documents very, very well, for us to be able to make any difference in our classrooms and in our schools. If we see a diagram which has been given on page 31 of the NCF SE, it very clearly, kind of tells us steps of the NCF SE. And I just thought that you should draw your attention towards that and go through it well. I'm just going to have a cursory, speak about it very in brief. It talks about the vision of the society and the aim of education, and then goes on to how these aims can be achieved. And actually, the whole NCF is on the basis of this diagram. So I thought if you see this diagram, there'll be a lot of clarity about the way the NCF has unfolds. So it obviously talks about the basic aim of education, which is coming from the NEP, which is, rational thought and autonomy of thought, which I think is very important in India, which doesn't really happen in our classrooms. A lot of questioning has to be done. Children need to be taken to a different level of thinking. Of course, talks a lot about health and well-being, and especially in a country like ours, where there's malnutrition, where there is poverty. I think health and well-being for everyone is important, with mental well-being being spoken about just about everywhere, which again is, I think, very, very current. Then talks about the way we handle our children in our classroom, so that they can be active participants in our democracy, in our economy, in our culture, and in our society. So I'm just giving these brief few points which come up in as the aims of education. Then it also talks about how these aims can be achieved, and speaks about the knowledge, capacities, value, and disposition. I will briefly speak about it as we go along, but what is very, very important is this word disposition. I have heard it probably for the first time, because it speaks about the attitudes that we need to build in our children. And I think that's very important, because as a teacher, I feel the next generation's attitudes were kind of going a little haywire, and value systems too. So values we have been talking about for a long time, but disposition and attitudes, I think, has come up in a very big way in this NCF. So I just thought I'd draw everybody's attention to this very important part. And so they say it should be a part of our curriculum. Another thing, which of course has been spoken about right from the NEP, that it should be deep rooted in the Indian tradition. So I will mention about the Panchadi, which was there in the NCF FS, and about, there was the other Panchakoshas. But another new term has come up, and a new thought has come up in this, which is Pramanas, which is the source of knowledge, which again, I thought was a very interesting point. Because if you don't know as a teacher, how is it that children can learn from their senses and from all different ways? I won't go into the depth of it. You wouldn't know how to really plan your curriculum. So I think another very important word that you should look forward to and read about it. It's short, but it's very interesting. So it speaks about the sources of knowledge. Then, of course, it speaks about the different, the school culture, the processes, very importantly. In fact, there are chapters later on it towards the end. I haven't read it, but I've read this brief part, and I found it very interesting, how the infrastructure, how the processes, and how the school culture has to be built if we need to make a difference in our children's lives as teachers. It's also defining very nicely the curricular areas. I'll speak more about the curricular areas later, because it becomes very important when we speak about the board examinations. Because I'll be critical also a little to that part. But the curricular areas of the language, math, science, social science, interdisciplinary, it's very well defined. So I think that's another area that you should go through, because it speaks then about the content, the pedagogy, and the assessment in each curricular area. And through each of the stage, which is the 5+3+3+4 stage, it talks about the content, the pedagogy, and the assessment in a very clear term. So I think that's another thing that you should watch out for. And that's where I feel it's a very well laid out document. And it, of course, takes into consideration at all the 4 stages, the physical, the cognitive, the socio-emotional processes, in the children. So that is always to be kept in mind as we move in the 4 stages. Then, of course, it is once again reiterating which is very clearly laid out as in the NCF FS. which are the Panch Koshas, which is the 5 sheets or the 5 layers of learning, which is again, coming from the Indian tradition. So what I liked is that they're mentioning these, the Pramanas, the Panch Koshas, the Panchadis, because they want us to understand that everything that came to us was not a part of the Western culture. There was a lot in our own Indian culture, which we should really not only feel proud of, which is a taken, but we should study. In fact, I was thinking that it's very important. I haven't done it personally, but the Taittiriya Upanishad is something that I'm planning now to read because it is a source of all these. So I think, again, as educators, if we don't go deep into the Taittiriya Upanishad and understand this, I don't think we would be doing justice to our work as teachers. So let me just talk a little about the content. I'm going to come a little closer to my ending, but I want to speak about these 2-3 facts. When it comes to the content, it talks very nicely about reducing the content to the essential concepts, which was there from NEP, speaks a lot again about it. And I am a little critical, frankly, about this. That's what I'm going to be a little critical about 2-3 things, in the NCF SE. I don't know whether we are really reducing our content in a rationalized way, which they said. For example, things have actually already started getting introduced, even though we are supposed to give our feedback on the NCF SE. All the circulars of CBSE we've been receiving for the past few months has already started implementing all this. So I'll give a very short example. I'm sure it's going to resonate with all the educators. We were just given a circular for reducing in class 6, 7, and 8 in the content part, practical geometry. And in 7 in particular, I'm talking about things I stand against, congruence of triangle. And it said it's because we want to bring it down to core essentials. And I was wondering, oh God, if practical geometry and congruency of triangles in class 7 is not core, then probably what is it? Because if you don't give this as a base, the children are going to have problems as they move up. So somewhere, reduction in the courses, which they speak about, and bringing it to core essentials, I think is quite questionable whether they are doing it in the right way or not. So I don't really believe that we're doing that part very well. The other thing, of course, they speak about is the pedagogy. And they talk about, the physical, the emotional, the social and ethical development of the child. And they speak that the teachers must know brain very well if they want to take the pedagogy higher. They need to connect well with the students, positive environment, etc. I don't want to go deep into that part. But this is where they come in with the Panchadi, once again in the FS and again in SE, where they say, if they do not know the steps of learning, then it's not going to be easy for teachers to plan well. So for good planning, the steps of learning needs to be well read by the teachers. It's going to help them in their planning. So that's just one thing that I wanted to speak about, the pedagogy part, without going deep into it. For knowledge, something that I personally loved was the Smriti part. Again, it was in FS. It's now come up again in the SE, where they speak about memory. And all the while in India, we have been speaking against for the past 10, 15, 20 years, oh, it's all about rote learning, it's all about rote learning. And they again take us back to our roots and they say, Smriti is a very, very important part of learning. And it's not rote learning, it's memorizing with understanding. And this time it very clearly says that if you're memorizing with understanding, you're actually making it into a habit in your life and leaving space for higher order thinking processes of the brain, which I always stood for. It's like a stamp on something that I always spoke about, but was never taken very seriously. So I'm very happy that Smriti has come up in a very, very good way. It's talking, of course, about the assessment of for as learning. I'm not going to go deep into it. Talks about the HPC. And the only concern I have, I'm coming towards the end, I'm going to respect time. The few things that I want to speak about assessment is, I think that from the NEP and now going wider into the NCFs, we are overdoing assessments. We are talking too much about assessments. Yes, we are talking about the holistic part, which is brilliant. But every time a teacher teaches, you're going to be observing, because you have so many areas to assess, because it's going to be holistic. I think that teaching time is somewhere going to suffer, because every time a teacher is analyzing, every time a teacher is trying to check you out, is she in a frame of mind then always to teach, connect? We talk about the emotional part, then we're talking about assessment. Personally, I think we are overdoing the assessment part in the school. And why I say that is, if you go again, I think it's page 54 of the NCF, and it talks about the board examinations. Some beautiful changes are coming up. Of course, that we should assess the achievements of competencies. They're talking about board examinations at least twice in a year, on demand. Brilliant things. They're also talking about evaluators, paper setters, reviewers having certificate courses. I just love that, because people who set the papers probably don't even know how to set papers. So I think I love that part. But having said that, to have board examinations in class 10, 8 board examinations, I'm not very sure if I've got clarity and understanding, whether it is that we'll be taking it, in 8 parts, or by towards the end, it's going to be 8, but 16 core essentials or core curricular areas are going to be, 2 of each of the curricular areas are going to be examined. Sounds too much for me. I think in 9 and 10, oh God, we'll only be hassled with board examinations. We did it during COVID time. We barely studied. We only kept taking assessments that year. I think we're kind of moving towards that. The last thing, 11 and 12, I'm very critical about the board examination pattern that they've come up with. It's speaking about more of breadth in 10, 9 and 10, even in 11 and 12, and only at certain places it's talking about depth. In an age of specialization and super specialization, at least our children did a lot of in-depth studies starting from 11 and 12, and I thought that was the strength of India. Somewhere I feel talking too much about the breadth may take the depth of knowledge away from a class 11 and 12 child, though they say that it's going to help the children in choosing their careers. I think it's going to leave them a little confused with too many things in 11 and 12. Last point, if you go through the way they put the curriculars, what I was trying to analyze today, my science child, just giving an example, got nothing to do with any bent of science. A child could do physics, chemistry, bio, and maths, and choose between 2 streams, okay? I think he cannot do physics, chemistry, bio, and maths, because they come under 2 different curriculars. Even if they take 2 from one from the other, they cannot reach the maths part at all. If you do it critically, I've kind of tried to analyze, and that's if I've understood it right. So I'm critical about the way 9, 10, 11, and 12 has been handled. I think it's a little more of breadth, and depth has been taken away to a large extent. So that's all that I wanted to say, just being a little critical about things, open to questions later. Thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely fabulous. I would say that it gives us the right direction, Mrs. Burman, purely because I think let's not just talk the good things about the NCF. I think we should be really critically evaluating it. So thank you for doing that. I think Ms. Paramjeet Kaur is raising a hand. Yeah, you have anything quickly to ask? You can unmute yourself. Otherwise, I did mention that we will take all these questions at the last, please. Okay, fair enough. So quickly moving on to, for leaders who have joined us just now, so we have kick-started with the opening remarks from all our 4 speakers, and then we will go to the specifics of the first part of the NCF SE, which is that we have divided the entire conversation for today only on the approach, which is the first part of NCF SE, considering that there's a huge content to be covered within this, for that matter. Okay, so I move on to, if I have with me Kavita. Kavita, over to you quickly, and let's start with your thoughts on this.
So I definitely have heard about what Amrita said. I resonate quite a lot with that, and I think she gave a very nice explanation to the entire overview of this entire session. What I really like is when they spoke about how vision of society is going to vision of education, that is going to aim of education, that is going to desirable values and dispositions, capacities and knowledge. The way this described knowledge out here, talking about descriptive knowledge, exactly knowing the theories, the principles, the concept. When they go to capacity, they talk about the knowing how. So the procedural knowledge, how are you communicating effectively, thinking critically, the problem solving, the reasoning. When they go into values and dispositions, I like to think the fact that they're talking about epistemic knowledge. It is how is it that the reasoning is happening across? You're going into evidences. And that's so very important because whenever you're forming a fact or opinion, you need evidences. So this is what they're talking about, ethical, moral values, democratic values. They're talking about positive work ethics, curiosity, pride in Indian system. That is something I really, really like a lot. When you went into pramanas, that's what Amrita spoke about. She spoke about smriti and anubhava. So when you're experiencing through your senses and you have this thing about going across, that sensory perception is so important. Then anumama, mana, that is observation leading to new conclusions. Upamana, identifying similarity and differences. Arthapati, circumstantial implications. Anupalabdhi, perception of non-existence. So this is something that's very nice that they spoke about. If a dog is not barking, it means it also speaks that there is nobody around. I love that statement. I just loved it. So that is something I never ever thought about it, but this gives you an idea of perception of non-existence. And subject testimony of an expert. That is also very important because that means somebody who's actually experienced a couple of things, you're taking that knowledge and you're building upon that. So going back to an expert is so, so important. And they gave the words out here. It's the first time I've used these words. So I'm now actually feel so proud of the people across from the Upanishads. Wow. When they went on to aims of school education, obviously she spoke about rational thought and autonomy, health and well-being, democratic participation, economic participation is something which I really liked because we never talk about economic participation ever. Cultural and social participation, we definitely talk about. Again, we talk about capacities when you go into greater things. I think all is spoken about, but again, the trust on inquiry-based learning is something that I really want to, I think they're promoting it in a very, very big way. When it came to logic and design, I think that they spoke about the child when it comes to biological process, cognitive problems, processes, and socioeconomic process. The entire Venn diagram is something that we should take away from that because how they're all interlinking. And when she spoke about Panchakosha Vikas, I just love that how we went from Sharirik Vikas to Mansik Vikas to Bodhik Vikas to Chaitsik Vikas. So how we're using these words, we know exactly that it is, intellectual development, but now I know what to use the synonymous for in the Sanskrit. So I think that makes you very clear. The diagrams are very, very clear. The kind of things have taken across to make learning more clearly. The stage designs, I felt very nice because when I go to foundational stage, I know my curricular structure has to be physical, socio-emotional, ethical, cognitive, cultural, and aesthetic. My content has to be more concrete-based. Pedagogy has to be play-based. Assessments are going to be something just like, in classroom assessments. And most important, they say, what is the teacher's role going to be out here? So what kind of teachers are you going to be expecting? So when they go from foundational to preparatory to secondary stage, they're making things very, very clear. When I went to 9th and 10th standard, as Amrita spoke about it, you have 8 areas. And in the 8 areas, you have to take 2 essential courses from each of these curricular areas for grade 10 certification. So if you have social science, there are 2 semesters that you have to pass in. That's what I understood across. So it becomes about 16 exams, which I think becomes too much for a child and even for a teacher and even for a school to implement it because it's 8 curricular areas. So when they talk about interdisciplinary areas, again, we'll have to wonder as to how are we going to bring about vocational education, physical education, art education, social science, science, humanities, mathematics and computing. In mathematics and computing was nice because they brought in computer science, they brought in about business. So I like that aspect quite much. Standard 11th and 12th, you have 4 curricular areas. In the sense, you are maybe taking like the areas are humanities, social science, science, mathematics and computing, arts, vocational education, sports, interdisciplinary areas. From this, you have to choose 4. 3 and 1 more can be repeated. And within that, you have to finish 4 courses inside it. So that becomes so much for the child to complete. I think that's what I understood, Amrita. I hope if I'm going the right way. But that's quite a lot to finish off. And I like another thing that chapter 3 was the broad principle of textbook design that I spoke about. I think we already are using textbook, but now when we choose a textbook, we should be clear that there's diversity and inclusion included in it. We're definitely looking into curriculum, discipline, pedagogy, technology, context, presentation. But have we thought about diversity and inclusion? That is another factor that should be taken across when you're doing a textbook design. And Panchali, as she's already spoken about, when it has a 5-step learning process, where we talk about Aditi, that is the introduction. Then we have conceptual understanding. Then we have Abhyas, that is practice, Prayog, application, Prasar, expansion. As I said, we're doing it, but now we have a session, a structure given to everything for teachers to follow. So overall, I'm quite pleased with what the NCF has produced right now. Something is given a guideline as to how to go about it. Many of the schools are following it, but when it comes to this 9, 10, 11, 12, more amount of teacher development will be required because we honestly don't know how to conduct these examinations. Now, if it's a CBSE and we are following an ICSE or a Cambridge curriculum, do we still need to follow these kind of things? So that kind of clarity needs to come about for us.
Good. That's what we want. We want more diverse views on this because I think somebody who just reads it for the first time, it is an arduous, a big task to really decipher it at your level for that matter. So thank you for helping us do this. I would say, without waiting for any further, I will quickly move on to Bhavanishankar. Are you there? Dr. Bhavanishankar, over to you quickly for your opening thoughts on this.
Hi, I'm here, Gaurav. Thank you. I was just listening very keenly to Mrs. Burman and Kavita, and I really resonate some of their views too. But I'm going to play the devil's advocate here and talk a little bit about the parallelly emerging state education policies. So the desired document, I mean, I would quickly recall what happened in 2019. So the draft document came up with certain desirables, and these desirables were publicly debated about. There was a huge warm reception to what was captured in the wonderful desired document. So we could see in several of these NEP pages, shall be done, must be done, will be done, right? So it clearly went on to say what was the desire for the entire country to move ahead. And it's lovely, in less than 2 years, you have a very defined NCF document for the foundational stage. And this document is beautiful. So before we move on to the NCF draft document 2023, let us look at what was captured in the NCF 2022. Dr. Burman talked about the Panchakoshas, talked about the Pramanas. So the essence of the learning, the epistemic basis of knowledge, I mean, aligning to the Indian philosophy is something which is absolutely welcome. And this is marvelous to say that we are now not piggybacking on the Western philosophies or the fundamentals of the epistemic research or theories of knowledge. The desire as to why we know what we know. So we were talking about sensory perception, language, imagination, memory, faith, intuition, reason, emotion. So these were the constructs that were given to us on the Western opinion of how the knowledge was constructed, and suddenly we see the pramanas emerging. So you say pratyaksha, upamana, anumana, shabda, sambhava, arthapatti, anupalabdhi, so aitiham, a whole lot of these the concepts which was very dear to us as we were students of philosophy at some point in time, are emerging in our own reflection of what needs to be taught to the children. The best part of it, so I like this that the entire foundational stage has to be constructed around joyful play. I mean, the children learn best when they're happy, and therefore the entire construct is around play and activity is something absolutely welcome in this. Now, when we graduate to the new document, the draft NCF, I have some observations too, and I feel that the way that we need to look at it is sequential, moving from the foundational year upwards. And if we start interpreting what the middle school wants or the high school wants, so there is a resistance because the teachers suddenly feel that they have to offload a baggage that they have been carrying for all these years and suddenly translate into something which is going to be very different from what they have been practicing. Yes, there have been issues relating to what would be the construct of information in the middle years, and whether, this would dilute the quantum of information that is essential for the children to carry into the senior school. So this was pointed out by Mrs. Burman, and I would also feel that we need to reflect and understand whether these conceptual connects are emerging from the foundational preparatory stages and moving on to the middle school, or is it suddenly developing there? The fundamental premise that there is an embedded multidisciplinarity in everything that we look at, and the enormity of real life experiences that are naturally embedded in every element of learning, be it let's say the literacy, the numeracy, the digitacy, the content concept, or the context literacy, as we put it. These are elements that are definitely going to tell the child how to form these connects when he or she comes to the middle school. Naturally, the other dimensions which we would have possibly missed, we were overvaluing the cognitive dimension at some point in the school and overvaluing the marks. Now we are speaking the language of the other domains like the affective and the psychomotor domains in a very big way, and which means that the aspects of development, like such as the behavioral aspects, the emotional aspects, the social aspects, the moral ethical aspects, and the spiritual aspects, are being strongly considered in the new curricular framework. The senior school, when we talk about the class 9 to class 12, I would also feel that the breaking away of the existing system and to try and explore the possibility of something like the quarters now. So let's say that they would have about 8 different levels of these examinations over the years. This is something we need to strongly consider based on the allowances that are available to the schools. And in the current framework of operation, I do not really know if this is going to be possible unless there is an absolute clarity that is being driven into this. While we say that, how are the state's education policies going to impact the delivery of the new frameworks, and whether the states are going to be in absolute alignment to the framework is something that will play an important part in deciding whether these frameworks are being applied in letter and spirit across all the schools. So this is my opening comment. So,
fair enough. I think that's where you emphasize on the state bit. I think that's very critical, Bhavanishankar ji, and I'm sure, I hope state folks are listening to this as well. I'm sure not right now, but we will put it on the web and then maybe they can hear this. Last but not the least, Dr. Chandrashekar, over to you, and then we will open up for the larger conversation. Yeah.
Good evening, and thank you very much, Gaurava. And good evening to all the fellow panelists and educators who have joined this evening for this brainstorming and conversation. So coming straight to the point, we have all heard all the three eminent panelists speak in a nutshell about the first part of the NCF SC document. So I will not risk repeating myself of what they have already covered quite comprehensively. But I want to draw the attention of the audience to specific areas of the part A. And yes, before I even get started, this is indeed a comprehensive document which kind of covers a lot of ground, I may use the word, and it is also giving a lot of education to us. Forget about the implementation of the NCF, which is for us to wait and watch. But if you just look at the 600 odd pages, it itself is, I will compare it to a thesis or a PhD in practitioner course, because many of us are practicing it daily in and out in our schools and institutions, but some of us or majority of us do not understand the step-by-step process or the approach of what comes before and what comes after. So that, I think it has done a brilliant job, and I strongly recommend, even before we go forward, that all of you, all the 300 odd people here and your colleagues and friends, please spend some time, especially during the summer, glancing through this document, because we have that much more free time. And this 5-part series is definitely going to help you, but it is no substitute for you to go through the 600-page document. Having said that, let me come to the page number 15, which I think personally drew my attention, is the few key characteristics of this NCF to keep in mind as we read, right? And those characteristics are very, very relevant and pertinent to all of us as practitioners, as I've already said. And some of the things which they have highlighted and drew my attention was, one is practice enabling. That was the second part. This is not a policy which will be in the library or on the bookshelf. This is something which will help you kind of a go-to document to read, refer, research, and then come back and practice your profession or the craft in a more matured and more significant manner. So practice enabling is one of the key characteristics. Second, improvement driving. We all have heard of the Japanese concept of continuous improvement, Kaizen, but this document is a living and a breathing document for us to strive for that continuous excellence. So we need to look at it and kind of go back so that, okay, where were we and where are we wanting to go and what is the gap, and understand the gap and then come back and give our best shot one more time. So I think that's the whole premise on which this document draft is presented. Then is mutually reinforcing elements. Now, what does that mean? According to this document, is all the dimensions which are mentioned here are mutually enforcing. You must have heard Mrs. Burman, Mrs. Kavita, as well as Mr. Bhavanishankar. They all spoke about foundational stages and then the next stage, and also all the other elements of the assessment or the curriculum and the pedagogy. But if you look at it, there is an underlying connection between all these aspects, and that is what is talking about mutually reinforcing these elements. It's like each of those pillars are giving strength to the other one. It is not that I'm standing separately in a silo and I will be dealt in isolation. It is that which makes this document a little different than the previous ones, which is the interconnectedness, interdependentness, and also integrated approach. So that is what I would like to speak about. Now, if you look at the next part, and this is where I get little critical. They speak about taking a lot of inputs from the NEP document and then trying to give you implementable steps for going forward and achieving those goals of the 2030, the ambitious goals which we have all set to achieve. But again, there is definitely a tilt towards deep-rootedness of Indian heritage and Indian culture in the whole document. But we are also living in 21st century, and you cannot speak of 21st century skills only theoretically. Now, that is where my issue is, because you look at problem solving, you look at creative communication, you look at critical thinking, but how are we addressing certain elephants in the room? Like, how can we help children pick up psychology, which is more and more pertinent when we are looking at solving current day problems? I mean, I'll give you an example. We all know the importance of entrepreneurial mindset in current world. Now, we know those social media giants have actually leveraged on the psychological aspects where the dopamine boost happens when you kind of look into the Facebook or Twitter or any other thing and you get addicted to Instagram, is all because they have looked at psychology as a discipline in itself and they have built businesses over it. But today, if you look at the options available, the integration available, I think psychology is missing. Same in other way, if I have to look at it, is financial literacy. You talk about computational thinking, you talk about business mathematics, but financial literacy, like, during our MBA days, we used to have one program which is very, very common, was finance for non-finance managers, which is basically to get everybody up to scale with accounting and basic debit and credit and those things back then. But today, we have to bring in the element of savings, element of investment, element of a lot of other financial literacy things, right from, according to me, the middle years. The middle years are the years from grade 5, 6, 7 and upwards. We need to bring in. And let us not forget the social fabric of the society. We are all moving, or rather moved towards the double income families. We've also moved towards nuclear families. We've also moved towards independence becoming a very important dinner table conversation in our families, where the youth of today are talking about their own self. They're talking about their passion, their profession, their vision of life. And that also means we need to empower them with the do's and don'ts, or at least the globally acceptable practices of financial management. Because you cannot talk about values and dispositions without teaching or connecting it to implication or application. I think that's one thing. I agree there with Mrs. Amrita Burman when she spoke about dispositions. I think you have two of us who have heard that word for the first time through this particular document. Where attitudes, like we all know that values have been spoken at length, and values fundamentally talks about the belief systems one as individual nurtures and nourishes. But the dispositions speak about the attitudes which translates later to behavior. And whatever we believe actually forces us to behave in a particular manner. Now, that belief and behavior, if you look at it, should also be aligned towards a particular goal or an aim or a destination. And that is where I'm critical about. You have the values, you have the disposition, but you have not given them the approach or the target. Like I gave an example of financial literacy. So the attitude and behavior should direct an individual towards that. Now, I think that needs to be done, where, yes, some of it is left for our interpretation and understanding. But in a country like India, where 54% of our schools are still run by government, and you know the kind of people who are involved in education, not just in government, even in private, you need to kind of give a spotlight effect on this is done for this reason. And like how we all enjoy the NCRT lesson outcome plan, where this is the topic and these are the outcomes. So we need to look at connecting the dots to the last dot, not just leave it midway. That's my observation as far as that part goes. Now we go a little further, and this is my last two observations, is I really love the fact that they are spending a lot of time about importance of questioning. This has been heard a lot. In fact, Socrates very famously said and went that the right teacher is the one who not gives the right answers, but asks the right questions. So questioning becomes very important. And I believe if you have the right set of questions with you, let me be a little radical in saying you don't need a lesson plan. You will be able to get the quality inputs drawn from your class, be it 20, be it 50 or more, anything. right? So the importance questioning, I loved it. It's on page number 71 for those of you who want to spend. It's just a matter of 10 or 20, 15 lines, but then those are very important. It kind of puts the spotlight again on how important questioning is. Then move forward, next page 73, it talks about guru. And I will read this last two lines, and I think this is my favorite line in the part A, is teacher is the first letter, the student is the last letter. Knowledge is the meeting place and instruction is the link. I mean, it is fantastic. You know, we have heard teacher as a facilitator, teacher as an empowerer, but talking about India, teacher is the guru. And it also speaks about there are three instruments of a guru. One is teaching, two is setting a right example, and three is influence. And remember, there is no mention of the word instruction here. There is no mention of the word instruction. It is teaching, it is example, and it is influence. And again, if you go back to the NCERT document, which was released a while ago on the secondary school curriculum, it speaks at length about the role of a teacher. In fact, it goes on to say about the teacher is the center of every initiative and activity which happens inside the school, or rather for that matter, in school education. So teacher is celebrated. Teacher needs to be celebrated. And this once again puts the line straight as far as that part is concerned. Moving forward is the 5-step learning process, or the Panchadi, what we have already spoken about at length. And I think it is important because especially when you're looking at the lesson planning, because you are having that lesson plan as your sacrosanct document. So how are you introducing the topic? How are you going for conceptual knowledge and other things? But here, if you look at the 5 or 7 components of a teaching plan, I think that is where I want to draw your attention to. It, for the first time, talks about prior understanding of the student on which choice of pedagogy is based, which is what we heard a little while ago about knowing the brain of your children. I mean, the right brain, the left brain. Do you want to go logical? Do you want to go imaginative? Do you want to go abstract? You need to know your student. As we say, know your customer first, know your audience first. Similarly, know your students. And teacher has a great way of understanding her students, and very important of drawing that understanding to the lesson plan planning. So it has given a lot of steps, or rather components of the lesson plan. But I think this one caught my attention particularly, is prior understanding of the student on which choice of pedagogy is based. It further translates to one more thing, is classroom arrangement, where, you know, looking at seatings. Yes, we've all got those vendors at our doorstep who comes to us that says modular furniture. We are here to help you make the class interesting. All that is fine. Even if you have got modular furniture in your schools, how are we using it? Are we having a plan, a method to rearrange and arrange the classrooms every time we come up with new lessons? That's the whole thing. And I think, to be honest, you don't need modular furniture to rearrange and arrange the classrooms. You need the modular mindset. You need to look at changing the situation. And I mean, we know, right? When you go to a zoo park, when you go for a field trip, there's no furniture. Children are sitting on the bench, children are standing or loitering around or jumping around. One is putting a hand on another, but the child remembers, relishes, and recollects that for a long, long time. So it's about how are you knowing you are them and making it count. So these are the things which I really, really liked about this particular document. And there are more which we can take as we go as questions, but I would like to end here. But fantastic document, and it's a must read. And I appreciate IPN for actually starting the conversation. And to my best of knowledge, this is the first such forum which has initiated a conversation across India. So congratulations, Gaurava, on being a pioneer once again.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chandra. What a lovely, in fact, I think I am actually, what I feel it usually out of words, actually. I don't have words to say what. It has so much to talk about, this document, right? You can start from one end and you will find that even that is relevant to talk about, right? But I think you made some very wonderful points. I've been reading few chat as well, which are very critical, but then it's not about me right now. I open up the house for Q&A quickly so that we can take up as many questions as we can. Over to all of our leaders. I'm just putting all my guests on the spotlight so that you can direct your questions to either one of them or all. You'll have to do it in a very simple fashion, which is please put a virtual show of hand. We'll help you unmute and you can ask your question. Please go ahead. Yeah, so if you do not have a question, then I have a question, right? Which is very elementary to begin with. Any one of you can. Acha, Rashmi, please. Yes.
It's from
Not audible. Some problem with your network.
Anyone?
Rashmi, Miss Rashmi, some problem with your network. If you can first.
Can she just post it on the chat?
Yeah, that's better. Rashmi ji.
Yes.
Yes.
I will do that. Yes.
Rashmi ji, over to you.
Congratulations, Gaurava, and wonderful speakers.
You'll be coming next, by the way. Never mind.
Oh my God. But I'm going to share some genuine concerns, and I know that all of us think about it. This lack of sync with the state and the center, I think Bhavanishankar had spoken about. He spoke about the emerging policies. I mean, right now, the reform seems to be 24/7. The messages seem to be at a Vande Bharat speed. And, but, you know, we don't have the mal in the pot to create this kamal so quickly. And that my genuine worry is this: we are all getting so swept away with this fabulous document, and at the translation level, we get the circulars, let's say from CBSE, roz raat ko 12 baje. Okay, and nothing is off the plate. CBSE exam bhi hai abhi tak, and then April 1st ko school bhi shuru hona hai. And, you know, right now, business as usual is happening in some ways. My worry is that we are overwhelmed. And because of that, this will get jinxed. Wonderful effort. Is there some kind of pause and the phase-wise reforms rather than flooding of it, that we all will get so swept away and aha feeling, and suddenly we're all going to be lost in islands? And I think somewhere we need to be a little more critical, because it's deja vu for me, the CCE. I mean, 1 year we threadbare discuss CCE as how it's the ultimate solution. And after 2 years or 3 years, we did a great burial ceremony. Any comments?
So if I've understood your question, I mean, I have the same feeling, Lakshmi, just like you, and I think we were kind of chatting on the side. So I think the biggest problem has been that there's been a complete lull, except for the CC, which was one, I think, excellent move, badly implemented, horribly worked on with teachers. Teachers' capacity is what you just spoke about on a chat with me. And I think we're going to be in the same track. For years, we've done nothing in education, frankly. You know, the intent has been there. Even the NCF 2005, I think, which we were speaking about, how many of us have sat down to really read it and threadbare discuss it? Not because we didn't have technology, it's because the intent of the government wasn't there. A document was to be released, so it was released, and nobody really spoke much about it. This time, there are 1 or 2 positives, and of course there are negatives. The positive is that the political intent seems to be there. But the problem is, with the political intent, it's like, as you rightly said, just go bang, 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 bang with it. So as educationists, for all of us, as I was mentioning, reading it is becoming a problem. So it's not just about reading a document. It's about taking it in and then building the capacity of your teachers inside your school. Where is the time that the government is giving us to sit down and work with the teachers outside agencies, inside agencies? That's immaterial. But the teachers' capacities have to be built. So it's not just about one document to the other document. I don't think we're approaching it in the right way. And let me tell you one more thing. This is again, I think, from a lot of progressive schools also will wonder, okay, there are some parts of it which are new. What is really new? What is really new? There was a lot that we were already doing. So are you leaving me with many things that are new? Well, no, except that it is being, I think it's been gift wrapped beautifully. It's really been gift wrapped well. Not standing against any document. I love the document. I loved reading it. But I think there's a lot that was already being done. Having said that, teacher capacity, give it a break. Let us now look inside and start working if you really want us to implement this document in the right way. So it may not go the CCE way, even though the intentions may not be there.
Can I come in? So I want to respond, for example, if you're talking about from CBSE way, but I'm talking about ICSE way, we already have a separate set pattern of exams. And now when this comes in, I'm actually thinking about what am I supposed to change now here as an educationist? What is it that I should keep of this and what should I take off here? So when you're using a different curriculum, again, it's a lot of stress onto the educators as to what is this from here. Should I integrate within my curriculum? What should I discard from here? Again, at the board exam, is it going to be that board exam I'm going to give, or is the board exam of council is also going to change? So I don't know the future. I don't know what I'm going to do 2 years or 3 years from now. At the same time, I expect it to be at par with everybody else because everybody is talking about it. So I should bring in something to my school too. But what is it that I should bring in? So as already Amrita was saying, most of the progressive schools are already doing quite a lot. Now with the council, they come up with financial literacy as a subject, which we've already introduced. But now bringing this epistemic kind of things that we've discussed today, it is a lot of work. And do we train our teachers for the curriculum that we are following or what the NCF wants us to do? So again, a lot of stress.
Mangesh Kumar Avari, your question, please.
Good evening to one and all. My name is Mangesh Kumar Avari, Principal, Saksham School, Varda. Hats off, first of all, to Gaurav sir. I have attended previously your session in Nagpur too. You are a very visionary person and you know the veins of future.
Question puchiye.
Coming to the question, I'll go with Lakshmi madam. Is that we principals, we are ready for any documents, any circular which comes from CBSE. But the thing is there, the real implementation, so what we have to be trained for, or we have to train our even educators also. Their implementation, if it is not done, then everything goes in vain. Like madam has said, CCE, then last year we had ACP, annual pedagogical plan. We have been trained, we have done all these things. Then after 2 years, it wasn't by used. Then again, art integrated curriculum. So 1 year it has been given to schools and principals. Then even previous year, we can say hubs of learning also. So all these documents we are ready to cope up with, but if it is not fruitfully implemented, then there will be problems. Now also, as we are saying, it is a one nation, one policy, but there is CBSE, there is ICSE, there is the state board. So how it will reach to every corners and every stalks of life? That is $1 million question. Now also, when it comes to language policy, and NEP says that mother tongue is compulsory for even the second language. As I'm in Maharashtra, Maharashtra government is saying Marathi is compulsory. CBSE is saying any language they can choose. So we all dive into the ocean where we don't know where we have to go.
And they're not teaching you how to swim. Never mind.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You want to answer that? Yeah, please.
Yeah, I think I will take that. Mangesh Kumarji, I think I will see you as a representative of the commotion which is existing in almost every sector and in every school. Okay, so if I have to answer that, let me say this. You know, See, we have all heard of that story, right? Where there was a man who always used to believe in God, and when there was floods, he said that God is going to come to help me. And then he kept on going up the ladder in terms of he went from ground floor to first floor. Then a boat came. He said, "No, no, God is going to help me. You go away." And then he gets to the terrace, and then the helicopter comes for rescue, and they says, "No, no, God is going to help me. You go away." And then finally, when he kind of drowns and goes up, he gets angry with the God up there and says, "Where were you? I believed in you, I trusted you, I prayed for you, but you never came to help me." And God said, "Who do you think sent you the lifeboat? Who do you think sent you the helicopter? And if you don't recognize that and you have come to me to complain, I'm sorry, you can be here, but I can't do much about it." So I think that story is relevant for us here, because if you look at this document and all these things, these are guiding lights, like that, lighthouses on the ocean, where they don't do much, but they give you enough to survive and to sustain and to thrive. I think that is the context and light in which we need to look at these documents. Like, for example, if you look at lesson plan, I spoke about it, so I'm going to take that same example. As a teacher, whether you're in a Maharashtra school, I do have schools in Maharashtra, but if I look at Maharashtra or even Telangana or Karnataka or any part of the country, north, lesson plan is very much available and prevalent in every school without any curriculum there, right? Now, if you can bring in these elements and all the other things what our other panelists have spoken about, whether it is pramanas or the panchakoshas, if we can bring in this in our class. So as Gandhiji rightly said, you be the change you want to see around you, then rest will happen. I know that I can be philosophical, but at the end of the day, that's the only way to survive and navigate through this particular thing. If you expect for external help to come and do it, handhold you, I don't think that is happening anytime soon, at least in the next 2-3 decades. So don't wait for that. Let's take it upon ourselves and get going. That's my answer.
I thought you were about to say 2-3 years. You just added decade to it. Never mind. Rashmi was asking us a question. Anand has reminded me. What should you suggest to teachers so they are able to distinctly differentiate between memory with understanding and rote memorization? What are the focus points should be noted by them specifically? If any one of you, that's a question on the chat, in fact, by Rashmi, who had initially come.
Can I take that?
Please go ahead.
Okay. See, I would put it this way, Rashmi. Let's say that there is a line, what we call as comprehension, when we talk about understanding. The rote only reminds us to narrate what is being recorded orally, and we are able to narrate it based on the premise of what we have heard or seen over time. But to clarify the information and to comprehend what is inside of that information, we would qualify that as understanding. So let us say you ask the question to the child, why you have said that answer, and how do you think that your answer is going to solve a particular problem, and the child is able to relate. That would clearly say that the child has understood the essence of why he picked up that information, or he or she picked up that information in the first place. I would say, with respect to memory with understanding and then just recalling information, this would be the difference. Let's say we have been reciting shlokas over time. It's not essential that you understand every single segment of what is being told to you. You just close your eyes, and then because you have heard it so many times, so it automatically flows. The same thing will be true with a movie song. We are not looking at the lyrics. We are not looking to recall. We are just only remembering the rhythm and the tap of the feet, so that we feel that this music can be played back to us any number of times, and we can even relate to the song and the tune and the lyrics, but we are not very certain what is embedded into that song. So whereas if we understand the context of what is being said, so the emotion that is being overlaid on the song, or the plot in which the song is said, we understand why that song was played. So This would be a very easy example to for me to narrate that what is just memory and what is memory with understanding.
I just wanted to come in here. I think that was very beautifully said by you, sir. But I very simplistically, that I would look at it, I think, Rashmi, it would, if a child has clarity about something, and what was mentioned by Chandrashekar beautifully, it's about the questioning techniques, So it's about putting different questions to your children. It helps moving from that rote memorization to clarity. The more there's interaction, the more you go over it. There's also a mention in the NCF about repetition of the same, In fact, Smriti was more about the memorization. It's about a lot of repetition. So keep repeating it in different ways. So what he said was absolutely right. You can decipher between rote memorization and about, doing something with understanding. But what I'm trying to tell you is probably little methods, questioning, repeating, doing it in different ways, concept clarity comes. So something can easily be moved from rote memorization to understanding. That would just help if you use these methods.
Perfect. Manish, your question, and maybe these are the couple of more questions we'll take up and we'll call it a day because it's already, I think, 6:37 by my clock. Manish, aapka question?
Yeah. Good evening, all. Am I audible?
Bilkul. Please go ahead.
Yeah. This question is for all honorable members. Basically, if you talk about both NCF foundation stage and presently school education, teacher is the focus of both this document, and teachers are being called torch bearer of change. But my question, as a principal and from the management side, how are we going to train teachers on all these aspects? Whether you talk about the questioning method away from rote memorization, and the training for teachers, which is, the core question, are we going to introduce NCF, both NCF during the BA program, especially for the new teachers who would be joining the school, or those who are already working in the school with 6 days a week, 24/7 class? Are we going to wait till summer vacation on the winter vacation? Because, it's not just a 1 day or the 2 days training where the teachers with so much experience, they are going to change their, the teaching pattern suddenly as per the NCF. So whether the questioning method, like Mrs. Burman beautifully said, the NCF document is beautifully wrapped. But how are we going to, train teachers in pragmatic mode? Though in NCF 2005, it was again learning by doing method, again experiential learning. Now again, we are talking about the practical method. So the core question is, how are we going to train teacher and when? So, if we can, the experts can throw light on that, because after 15 years, we have got this document. And the NCF 25 more or less said the same thing. I have gone through that. 80% is the repetition. So this is my part. I mean, how we are going to, because teacher is at the core, and they are facing the students on everyday basis. Thank you.
So anybody would like to go? Otherwise, teacher and teacher competency is so close to my heart. I have to go on this. And I think somebody very rightly mentioned that, I think it was Chandrashekar, that don't wait, do it, So I think even with teacher competency and teacher upskilling, don't wait for any platform from CBSE. They have created some platforms. All our teachers go in for it. There's a 50-hour CPD that they made mandatory now. But all these are mandated. You have to understand that the government also has to think a lot about the government schools and have to implement a few things, because it has to be done. And actually the change will come to a large extent from there. So even if it is mandated and it is done, it's great there. But most of us here, I think, are private progressive schools. And when the NCF also talks a lot about school culture, okay? So if you have a school culture where teachers take out time, money and effort, that's what I tell my teachers. Okay, you have to take out your own money to a large extent. Of course, we invest a lot. That's a different issue. Money and effort, because you have to believe in your own upskilling. The culture has to be created. You have to do a lot of training on your own. You have to get a lot of people from outside. I'm not very sure if I'm speaking to Anand Krishnaswamy, whom I can see But Anand, if you're the same Anand who works with us, Anand does so much of work with us. He's just begun on the HPC with us on in the school. So there's a lot of investment you have to make. Create the culture, take the first step yourself. Don't wait for the change. I reiterate very much what he said. Be the change that you want to see in the world. Don't wait for anyone else.
I would just like to.
Yeah, please go ahead. Kavita.
So at the same time, I would just say that I do a lot of training through IPN, and they're doing a fantastic job for training of teachers. And training for teachers is mandatory because if you're not updated, then you're outdated. So a teacher has to be updated in class.
And if we do not have any question, I'll quickly thank all my 4 panelists. Thank you very much for your valuable time. We have just kick-started this. Anand is here, I believe, and Anand is raising his hand now. Anand, over to you. You are.
Thanks, Gaurav, and thank you, ma'am, for the message. The quick thing I would like to say, and I think this sort of provides sort of a concrete round phrasing to what Dr. Chandrashekar said. There is nothing in any of the policies of this country, the education policies, that states that a school cannot make decisions on its own and progress towards what is correct. There is no such policy statement anywhere in the past or in the present, right? So which is what in the last message as well, which I've shared, it's the educational leadership that is going to distinguish between schools that are on the sidelines waiting for someone to tell them what to do, and those schools that will say, you know what, this is our opportunity. Let's just start marching towards what we believe is right, and actually necessitate and mobilize whatever it is required to achieve what is right. Then there's a significant opportunity for those schools to even be one step ahead of what the Ministry of Education is even thinking. Because you can't go wrong when you are doing what is right for the school by the students. So I think these are really nudges, and this NCF really is opening the doors without actually explicitly stating that. They're actually saying, see, we're opening all of this up. Please take this opportunity and do what is right. And, you know, we are supporting you by actually putting it into the policy. So yeah, it's really an opportunity for all the school leaders to grab this opportunity.
Wonderful. Well said, Anand. In fact, that's a great sort of a closing remark on that note. Thank you, Dr. Chandrashekar. Thank you, Bhavaniji. Thank you, Mrs. Burman. And thank you, Kavita. Great to have you all over again. And we hope to see you in the next 15 days when we come up with the next session on this. Thank you. Take care, everybody. See you soon.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, everybody, all the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.